So thank you, everyone, for coming to the project update session about OpenStack-Ansible. I think we'll start with the usual who are we slide. So I'm Jean-Philippe. I'm working for Rackspace. I'm EVR tab on IRC. I have started to work on OpenStack-Ansible in 2014 or 2015. I don't remember really. Being core in 2016, and now I'm the PTL for this cycle.
My name is Kevin Carter. I've been working on OpenStack-Ansible since it started. I go by Cloud Null on IRC, and I'm a racker for the last bunch of years. So, hi.
I'm Amy Marish. I've been on OpenStack-Ansible from 2016 and core 2017, and I worked at Linux Academy.
Okay, so what is OpenStack-Ansible? OpenStack-Ansible is a way to manage production clouds. The idea of OpenStack-Ansible is with operations in mind. The way that we do that is we use containers, and we are building services from source. And all of that allows us to deploy, but also operate and upgrade an OpenStack cloud. The technology is quite simple. With the name that is OpenStack-Ansible, we are deploying OpenStack with Ansible. But on top of that, we are using a container technology that is coming from Canonical, that is named Linux Containers, also named LexC.
So for the people who've been following along for a little while, the OpenStack-Ansible is actually now 4 years old. It started off as Ansible LXC RPC because I'm awful at naming projects. That's just quite literally where it came from. That got moved into Icehouse. Juno became OSAD when it became a StackForge project, and then it became an official project in around the Kilo timeframe where it was OpenStack-Ansible. But effectively, we're 4 years old. Part of the Kilo initiative, we started the Simple OpenStack. We partnered with Ansible to create the Simple OpenStack initiative, which was quite literally just bringing to light how we could deploy, why we're deploying, what we're trying to deploy, and the upgrade story, operator story, just trying to get at the time, people were very much thinking, oh, OpenStack is this huge, nebulous, hard to manage, cumbersome thing, and we were trying to say, no, it can be simple if you use the right tools. And then Mitaka, we got moved over to the OpenStack namespace, and then Rackspace and Intel had a partnership with the OSIC, which kind of showed the work that OpenStack is capable of doing with our partnership with OpenStack Infra. There's a lot of, well, maybe a lot of people do know, but we had a quota of 1,024 VMs that we were giving to Infra at any one point in time, and they were using quite literally all of them. And so, showing that OpenStack not only can be used in a private cloud where you have these pet VMs, but also in a very ephemeral, heavy, high workload environments. And we've had a broad adoption across huge different workloads in the enterprise and in private clouds, whether that be a 5-node private cloud install on a half rack or a several 100-node enterprise deployment. So it's been a great 4 years. Kind of what I was just touching on is here's some of the people who actually work on OpenStack-Ansible on any given point in time. These are different logos, I guess, but they're people in the community channel who are helping other people perform operations and run their clouds using the OpenStack-Ansible tooling. And that's going back across every release that we've had since we moved into the OpenStack namespace.
So talking about contributions, here are a few contributions, statistics for the last cycle, Pike. As you can see, well, I don't have my full notes, but there are, if I recall correctly, about more than 2,000 commits that were done into the Pike cycle. And since the beginning of the project, we got around 11,000 commits. And these commits, when you check the Pike cycle, it was not only done by Rackspace. Rackspace is 56% of the commits, but you can see that there is a diversity that is growing and growing. And there are 11% of independent people that are doing commits. So the community is growing. And the picture on the right is just a part of the community that was there at the PTG in Denver, Colorado.
Yep.
And I think that you could be on the next community members.
One of the amazing things here is actually watching the IRC channel, right? So if you jump into the IRC channel, people are helping each other out from any given point in time. And so as somebody who has effectively been there since the very beginning, that was me early on, trying to help out everybody, trying to get everybody going. And then folks like JP came in and started helping out. And then all of a sudden you see different community members interacting with each other, solving different problems. And just watching it as a fly on the wall, a third party. It's fascinating to see the project grow, and it's something to be proud of as a community project.
Yeah, one of the comments a couple weeks ago is that we should be one of the default channels that gets added when you join. So
yeah,
that says a lot about our community.
It's a pretty friendly bunch. So in our last release, and actually carrying forward into Queens, we shored up our CentOS support, even though it's still, the gating is a little frustrating at times. OpenSUSE was added on 42-1, or 42.1, now 42.3. UWSGI was a major improvement across all of our OpenStack APIs, and actually was a community deliverable, and we met that across every different service that we could. The operations guide was another thing that we contributed to heavily, and then we also implemented our own install and deployer guide. And then at the bottom there is some of the different things that we've been working on recently is the multi-storage backend capabilities of our LXC containers, so that we can lower our overall storage footprint, improve the operability of those containers, and actually give operators the ability to triage things. Can take a snapshot of a very small image and send it off to a lab and go and figure out what's going wrong with it instead of impacting what's wrong with your customer. Solve the problem, get it up and running, and then go and figure it out later. And some of the tools that we're implementing using the core functionality within systemd and some other storage backends is actually opening up a world of possibilities. And that is actively being backported into Pike right now.
Yeah, on top of that, I think that the statistics of this were kind of impressive, because I think that we reduced the storage usage of 94%.
Yeah, it was 94% reduction in storage, and what is actually consumed when you deploy an infrastructure node. So there's some trade-offs there, right? It's not all roses and sunshine, but it does make a huge impact in what we can do, and so.
I will just add a word on the OpenStack operations guide. What we did in the Pike cycle was applying the operations to OpenStack-Ansible. So there is a guide that is the operations guide for OpenStack-Ansible that is directly linked in the documentation. For Queens, there are many, I would say, user-level improvements that we are focusing on: the manageability, the scalability, the user experience, and the interoperability. And all of that goes through different work that we're doing. One of it is a series of simplifications that we want to make the system lighter. The scalability, for example, could be improved by focusing on larger or smaller environment. And the smaller environment, for example, we will reduce some kind of features, or make some kind of features that are mandatory right now, and we'll make them optional. I'm talking about the repo build. That would be completely optional, and that would streamline the experience for small deployments. At the opposite, for very large deployment, they want to have a full offline install, and they probably want to build artifacts of a deploy before deploying. And that's going to be included into this cycle. On the other user experience topic that don't touch these things. We have documentations improvement because this cycle we want to, even if we have the operations guide, we have an install guide that is already, I think, very, very good. We can still improve things. There is a process. It's a process to install OpenStack, and it's not that easy. And I think that we could still improve that. And the interoperability, is currently worked on 2 different topics. Is to extend the distribution support for certain roles by bringing OpenSUSE, for example, and CentOS support. And the other is working with the OPNFV community by, for example, bringing new roles that are linked to NFV. So for Rocky, we'll be, anything beyond Queens, we'll be fighting the good fight. Sorry for the terrible joke. The manageability will go through simplifications with Ansible 2.4 and with Python 3. Python 3 being a work that we've already started with the previous cycle, but we'll try to make it consistent across all the projects that are supporting Python 3, and including Ansible. The user experience could be improved if we are showing what will be tested to all our 4 users. So in the cycle, I forgot to say that on the previous slide, is we will have role maturity matrix that says, well, for this role, it's supported under that distribution, and it's been tested for that amount of cycle. And so it proves that things are well tested. And these gating scenario improvements for the Queens and above are for filling the gaps that are not already done. On top of that, we want to improve the gating of the integrated gates. So the integrated gates is the main project gates, that's what we are calling it. And we want to bring more and more scenario that is more and more similar to what the user is deploying in his environment. The interoperability thing will be linked to the new distribution that will arrive in the future, like Ubuntu 18.04. And the last part of the interoperability is the cross-community work. And I will just go very quick on that. We already have cross-project work, and these projects, we already worked with them. So we have OPNFV, XCI, Dragonflow, Keystone, and NovalXD. We have our gates, our continuous integration system that is testing their commits. And the next step is that it could be your project or your use case.
So what we want to know is, what are the biggest barriers when deploying OpenStack? Whether you send it to one of the mailing lists or on the channel, but that information is important to us to improve the project. If you have questions with OpenStack-Ansible itself, again, the community needs the feedback. So pop on a channel, send an email to a list. And you can find any of us walking around the next day.
Yep.
Or, as we had on the first slide, you've got our IRC Nix. And we or any of the other members of the team are more than happy to work with you. So join us. How to contribute. So our documents are located at docs.openstack.org/openstack-ansible/latest. You can also get to us now from the deployment page. Our IRC channel is OpenStack-Ansible on Freenode. Our code is located in a couple different places, actually. So our main repo is git.openstack.org, OpenStack/OpenStack-Ansible. And you can find us on, that's basically the same thing, dude.
On playlist, maybe. Sorry.
So because we are operations as well as development, you can reach us on either of the mailing lists for OpenStack Dev or operations. We do monitor both, and just put in brackets OSA or OpenStack-Ansible to get our attention.
So thank you, and join us.
Yeah. Any questions? Comments? Criticism? Yeah. Yeah.
The 94% space savings, where is that actually?
Yeah, so what we were doing by default is actually provisioning all the logical volumes for all of the containers, which is at 5 gigs each and 32 containers. On average, plus or minus a bunch of containers, depending on what you choose in your dispersion. By using the ZFS, BTRFS, machine control, or even overlayFS for that matter, we don't have to actually pre-provision any of those logical volumes. And so none of that space is actually consumed. So in a typical deployment, instead of having 250 gigs totally provisioned, we have around 16 on a running cloud.
Any other question?
Well, thank you.